This project in our box we call the Sky Coaster. We've modeled it after all of those beautiful watches you've seen that have the moon rise and moon set time. Now, obviously, we're not keeping track of accurate time here, but we've kind of taken our standard planetary coaster and flipped it on its head a bit, done something we've never done before, to give you gears that are going to appear through this window. I've set them up so one is the sun and one is the moon and one are stars. It'll give you all kinds of opportunities for creative decorating. I think this may become one of my favorite coasters just because it's so smooth to spin and it's so fascinating to watch the pieces come in and out. So give me 1 second again and we'll open the package up and take a look at what the pieces are that you're going to want to color and how the layers are going to go together. Here's a closer up look at our Sky Coaster. As you'll notice, and we spin it in half, I can make the sun, and that's the moon, and the stars go across the sky. So that's what we're going to make when we're finished here. Let me open up this package for you and show you the pieces and parts of it. All right, here we go. We've got a little bag of hardware. Again, we're going to set that aside as always because we want to make sure that's out of our way. We've got a little bag of gears. Let me start with those this time. And we'll open it up and you'll see that you've got 2 big gears with no decoration. The only pieces of these you'll see when your project is done is actually the outer edge of the teeth. The rest of this is completely hidden because we don't want you to see too much of it. Then you have your 3 little gears, your sun and moon and stars. And then this is going to be your top display piece. I'll put it back in order in a moment. So as per any coaster that we make, you've got a thick ring, a piece of acrylic, that's our piece of acrylic, a thin ring and a thick ring on the top. Those 3 pieces will sit on top of your stars like this. Then under that, we're actually going to put another thick ring and then our annulus. This is what's going to drive the coaster, and we're actually going to build the entire stack like this as we put it together. Then we'll put our bottom layer, which is going to be our small holes that our gears are going to go into. And under that, our base with room for our feet and to protect our nuts. So that's the layers that we're going to need to use to actually assemble this. Again, you want to make sure you get all of this sanded and put together carefully and decorated as much as you want to. If you're trying to decide what pieces you have to sand, I would strongly recommend sanding the back of the annulus and this face, as well as the bottoms of all of these small gears and the bottom and the top of your big gear pair. Other than that, it's all about how you want it to feel and how you want it to look when it's finished. And you are going to build something amazing. I'm so excited to see what you do. I'm going to assume you've done all of your beautiful artwork and your pieces are laid out in front of you now. And they're all beautifully decorated and ready to make a pretty piece of art. So we're going to start this project by opening up your package of hardware. Let's take a quick look at what that is. And as we open it up, you'll see that you've got a plate of little bump-on feet to screw on, 1 5/8" screw, 3 3/8" screws, and 4 nuts. So I mentioned that we're doing this backwards from any coaster we've done before. So you need to make sure you're okay with that as we move forward. And the way we're going to start then is by taking your 3 planetary objects and we're going to put those into the base of your piece. So I'm going to put one of the 3/8" screws through them and screw it in. You could just push it in, but I'm going to screw it in and make sure, as usual, that you've got a little bit of space above it so that it'll spin nice and loose. I'm going to repeat that a second time and then a third time with my other pieces. My stars are going here. Now, if you're fanatical, you'll probably have to make sure they go in the correct order for you, whether that's in clockwise or unclockwise, and or counterclockwise, and make sure that they all spin nicely. No, I haven't made the moon match any specific crater pattern, I promise, but maybe you did when you were decorating it. Then we're going to take these two gears, and we want to glue these two gears together to get our big planetary gear in place. So we're going to do that next by putting some glue here. Nice bit of glue on there. I'm going to take my long screw and stick it up through the middle to make sure these are aligned properly, and I'm going to make sure I get my teeth lined up perfectly when I put them together. Squish, squish, squish. Make sure that, no, that's not staying glued together at all. Let's try that again. Make sure those teeth line up. Make sure you've got good stickiness together, because we definitely don't want those gears to come apart. With this super glue, if you push it together for a few seconds, that's usually the trick. And then you'll notice if you set that gear down, it will turn nicely, completely loosely on its own. Now, we're actually going to build our stack the other way from the top down. So I want to start with putting my nuts on the bottom, and let's finish the bottom and then we'll start on the top half. So open your glue bottle. You want to put little dots of glue on your nuts and put the 3 nuts on those 3 3/8" screws you had. Again, make sure when you're done that you still got enough room at the top to nicely spin each of the gears. These don't need to be super tight. This is all about making sure you can still spin all of the gears. And the nuts are mostly just to make sure everything stays in place well. Make sure that's all still spinning. We can put our bottom layer together. We're going to glue that on next, and we can just do that with a little bit of glue here and our loose spots. Get my layer of glue on, see if I can line up the screws properly and make sure my outside edge is all lined up nice and smooth. It's all about getting that outside edge lined up smooth. And then if you're ready for the feet, you can just put your little dots on. Put a dot of glue on each of the footholds. And then take your sticky feet and stick them to the bottom of the coaster. And now that that's done, let's turn this over and see the next step. I'm going to take my annulus, and what I need to do is I need to glue some layers together to get my annulus and my top together. So I'm going to take one of the thick rings, my annulus and one of the thick rings. I'm going to put glue on my annulus, being very careful to keep it away from the teeth so that it doesn't get into the teeth. Set it on top nicely. Push it down to make sure it stays all lined up. If you got extra glue on the outside, you can wipe it off with a blue towel. And if you got extra glue on the inside, you can wipe it off with a paper towel on the inside of that ring too. So now I have those two nicely glued together. Now I want to add this to the top layer, and I want to glue this in as well, nice and carefully aligned. So I'm going to run a line of glue again around this layer. like so. I'm going to place the sun and moon and stars calendar thingy on top. Don't you like that technical term? Make sure that's all lined up nice and smoothly. That's your secret. Make sure that's perfectly smooth around the outside. And now we're going to put our screw through, put our large planetary gear on, and slip it into this hole in the bottom, even it out, and I should be able to spin this very easily. We'll go ahead and screw this in through the bottom layer. Once it's coming out here, I can put some glue in this hole. I can set my nut on top. Maybe spin my screw out a little bit and then screw it back in to get this nut tightened on. This is the one you're going to want to be careful not to get too tight, because if you get it too tight, you won't be able to spin so smoothly, but you really just barely need to get that nut started. Once that's on and spinning smoothly, then we're ready to build our top part of this coaster and ready to put the coaster pieces together itself. If you just want a toy to set on a table or something you can stick your finger in and play with, you are certainly able to stop here. If you want to turn it into a coaster, we need to do a couple more steps. First, we need to run this around the bottom like so of one of the thick rings, and we'll line that thick ring up here on the outside. Push it down, make sure it's nice and smooth. Make sure we're still spinning nicely and that we don't take that ring apart. Then we're going to take a thin ring and we're going to glue that thin ring on top. The thing to be aware of with the thin rings is that they are a little bit fragile and they can be deformed. So when you set the thin ring on, you want to make sure that you're not reshaping it and turning it into an oval. The amazing thing about wood is actually how very delicate it is when it's cut into thin pieces. So you just want to set your circle on top here, push it down, and then as always, wipe the outside to make sure any extra glue you got on it gets wiped off, so you don't end up with any sparkly, sharp pieces on the outside that you can't do anything with. Now, we're ready to put in our acrylic. Please remember, and I think we actually did a video on this, that acrylic and glue in combination are really, really, really bad. So make sure your fingers don't have any glue on them when you peel them off. You can peel the acrylic off. Make sure the glue on your coaster is dry, all the paint's dry, everything's ready to go. And then set your acrylic aside. We're going to do one more piece first, but you need that to be peeled first. Now we want to put a bead of glue around the outside of the coaster. Let me move this into the center of the camera a little bit. We're going to put one little bead of glue around this thin top, very lightly. And once we've got that nice bead of glue all the way around the thin top, I'm going to reach over and pick up my acrylic. And I'm going to set it in on one side and gently drop it into the circle. If it doesn't go all the way in, not to panic. You'll actually be able to use this top ring that we're going to put on to push it down a little bit. We'll set that top ring on your coaster ever so carefully. Push it down. And now you're all done. And you have what I'm calling the Sky Coaster. You guys did a great job. Hope you had fun making this piece. Thanks. Bye.